Yes, my dear friends, in this lesson we will print text in our interface window. Now that we have learned our default fonts, so let's use one and print the word hello on the screen. For example, let's output hello using the Arial font. Of course, we should use the functions in the font file in Pygame, since we will be processing font. In order to print text in the window, we first need to create a font variable. For example, we can create a variable like interface underscore font. Then we must assign the SYC font function in the font to this variable. This function takes two different parameters. The first parameter must be of string type and we need to write the name of the font. Since we will use the Arial font, the definition for the first parameter of the function should be Arial. So like this. I will create a new comment here, and if you want to set the first parameter of the SYC font function, let's create a new string here and let's set your default font name. So I will set it as Arial. So let's continue. The second parameter is the font size and must be defined as an integer. Of course, let's note that there are pixels in size. For example, if we define the second parameter as 64, the font size will be 64 pixels. After the font definition is made, we need to write for this font. For this, we need to create a new variable and assign the render method defined in the font variable we created to this variable. This method prints the text we want using the font we added. Three different parameters must be defined. First of all, we must define the text we want to print in string type. The second parameter is the logical data parameter we use for distortions. Its purpose is to prevent distortions in the font we use. For this, we should set the second parameter to true. The third parameter is the color parameter. Three data fields are created in the form of a tuple. For example, we should define the color white, so let's create a new comment here and let's create new tuple and let's set it as 255, 255, 255. Of course, if you want to display the text on the window, we need to adjust the position respectively and define our text variable and position with the build method. And by the way, position adjustment is also performed with the getRect method. Alright, so now let's examine and interpret our code. When we examine our Python codes, we imported our module which is Pygame, and also we started our Pygame module. Afterwards, we created a variable called interface font, so you see here, and assigned our SYC font function to this variable. So here, so that we could add the default font. The font we will use is Arial and its size is 64 pixels. So here, after defining our font in our code, we created a variable named text to print text and call the render method with the font variable. So you see here. Since the word we want to print is hello, so that's why we defined a string type hello for the first parameter, so you can see here. We set the second parameter to true in order to avoid distortions. So you see here. Of course, we also defined the required values in the third parameter in the tuple in order to adjust the color of our text and to print white text. Since we have defined our text, we also need to adjust the position of our text because it is displayed with the build method. It is also important for us to show our text in the position we want. As you can see, we created a variable named text coordinate, so you can see here, and defined the center point of our text as 150 and 200. Next, we observe that we have created a window, and by the way, its size is the width value is equal to 640 and also the height value is equal to 480. And also we set all of these variables in the setMode function. When we continue, we observe that when we create our loop, we called our window variable and used build method. So we can see here. We defined the text variable and its coordinate variable as a parameter. Let's remind one more time. Regardless of text or images, if the window is desired to be displayed, they are displayed with the build method depending on the window variable. So our window variable name is interface, so that's why I called here interface variable. And of course we called build method and we defined our text and its coordinates. Of course we updated our window while we were operating on the window. And finally we closed our module. So we are done. If you run our code like this, and you see here, we got the output as hello on the interface window. So it looks perfect. Alright my dear friend, in this lesson we learned how to print any text using the default fonts of the Pygame module. So now let's move on to our other lessons and learn the basics of creation interface better.